What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be talking about episode 6 of Creepshow on Shudder. So we're finally here, and it's the final episode for the season of Creepshow. There has been some great things said about it. There's been some middle of the road things said about it. I think a lot of people are on the fence on whether or not they like it, because maybe they're comparing it to the original movies, which had a lot more budget, I'm assuming. I'll get into that later at the end of this piece. But basically, this is the final episode, episode 6. It has now been renewed for a second season because it obviously has broken records on Shudder. And today we're going to be getting into some spoilers of these two last segments for the season. I'll wrap it up with what I think about the entire season as a whole and what we might expect going forward. First up, we got segment 1 with Skin Crawlers. Now, this is probably my favorite segment of the two in this particular episode. It's written by Paul Dini, who has actually done the Batman animated series. He's done a few episodes in Monsters. He did Lost, the movie Double Dragon, the live action one.
Oh, you said it.
Oh boy. And many more, of course. He's actually done a ton of animated work for superhero stories like The Hawk and Space Ace and tons of stuff that I could go over. His resume is just chock full of it. Of course, we also have Stephen Langford, who also wrote on this. He's actually known as a producer and writer for the TV show called Family Matters. You remember the one, Urkel? He also did Malcolm and Eddie and a ton of other animated stuff too. Very odd mix of writers on this particular story, considering the animated series and things that they've worked on before. It is a little bit of an odd mix, I would say, for a horror show. But with that said, they actually did a pretty good job on this particular segment. This is my favorite one of the two. It was a lot of fun. It didn't exactly go where I wanted it to, but it is full of gore and funny moments that I just adored. I could have seen the outcome of this coming a mile away, so it wasn't exactly original, but it did fulfill my little sick needs of seeing people puke worms and shit all over each other, which is fantastic. I actually thought it was going to have like just worms coming out of their face, and it was going to be this like sort of Lovecraftian sort of thing based on the comic book cover, the faux comic book cover that they show before this segment starts. This segment was also directed by Roxanne Benjamin, who is a producer and writer as well. She's done Southbound. She worked on, as a producer, the whole VHS anthology series. She also wrote and produced for the XX anthology, one with all the female directors and writers, I believe. I think she's done at least one other segment that we've talked about on here before, maybe two. So essentially the story for this one is it's a weight loss program where people can just lose weight, literally like that, and come out of the room completely sucked dry of fat, come out feeling great. You follow a guy who's basically trying to sign up for this particular program, and when they reveal what the program is about, he gets a little turned off because obviously it's a fat-sucking leech that they put on your body to suck out all this fat.
What is that? You're not putting that thing on me.
And he's like the only hesitant one. Everybody else is like, sign me up, even after they find out how they do the process.
Take my money. Follow me, please.
Which, by the way, my girlfriend saw in the background when he's talking to the head speaker for this program, this weight loss program, a Pazuzu statue behind him. Now, I don't know why that was in there, but it was a little Easter egg that you can find. If you're not sure what Pazuzu is, that is the statue that was used in the Exorcist series. It was the demon that possessed her from the get and followed through the entire franchise, I think. Did you guys spot that? This weight loss program hasn't been unveiled to the public just yet, and I'm assuming that these are sort of test subjects to try out this new program before it hits the public. When he turns it down, he had talked to this one girl named Kelly, I think, who, was wearing practically a fat suit and with the neck and everything like that. And she sees him eating some food and sits down with him looking skinny and like now a spokesperson for this weight loss program. She kind of guilts him back into wanting to get into the program. And she tells him that, hey, I can get you tickets to this show that we're going to be doing on Morning America kind of show. He's like, really? She's like, yeah, well, actually, why don't you just be the test subject for this live production? And so he's like, maybe I made a poor decision. Maybe I should give into it. She seems to be doing all right. I should be doing all right. I've been dreaming about losing weight for years. It's affected me forever. It goes live and you find out that there's a solar eclipse that's about to happen. And I knew immediately right away that this was going to be the catalyst for what goes wrong in everyone. They even tell the guy, like some of the crew on this staff actually did the weight loss program before they put him on air. So he's feeling really confident going in. But when they start talking about this solar eclipse as it's happening, they're also talking about this weight loss program, and he's going to unveil what it is. So he unveils it, and it's a worm, and it's like writhing around like crazy. They go back to the reporter who is covering the solar eclipse live on air, back and forth a couple of times, but this time when they go back, his head explodes and it's like all over the news, which I was just like, yes! But then you obviously realize that there's some problems. They go back to the studio where they're going to test out this weight loss thing live on air. And certain people start puking up worms. They're coming out of their eyes. I was like, yes, this is amazing. I love this. People were like popping, like just worms coming out of their eye, which was really gross. Some of the worms kind of reminded me for some reason, like the goo, for whatever reason, reminded me of City of the Living Dead, aka Gates of Hell, the Lucio Fulci film where the priest is taking the worms. Anyway, it's not that, but I just thought it was really cool. Eventually, the head guy for the weight loss program is out in the hallway trying to run away from the problem because he had no idea it was going to turn into this. Turns out that all these worms infect these people to keep them, from gaining weight, writhing around in their body. And when the eclipse happened, it just makes them come out of their body. He's like, but you knew that the worms were going to be in people. That's messed up. And then eventually he just falls over dead, and then boom! Fucking huge ass alien pops out and is like slapping its tentacles around until he drops the machine on top of the creature killing it. And then he smiles, and it's like this kind of funny thing with blood all over his face. It was interesting. I thought it was a fun story. I don't think it was meant to be this really deep story, but it's just one of those things. Be careful what you wish for. Don't try these fad diets. Don't try these fad things because they don't really ever work. There's always some sort of price to pay when you do them. I think that resonates with a lot of people. It is very familiar territory as far as storytelling, but with all the gore and everything, I'd say I'd give this one an 8. I enjoyed it, and I would love to see like a lot more of that one. For segment 2, we have By the Silver Water of Lake Champlain, a very long title for a short. This is, of course, based off of Joe Hill's short story that he co-wrote with Jason Ciaramella. Apparently, he's done a lot of co-writing with Joe Hill on some of the comic books that they've turned into. I guess he kind of like does the work to translate it into comic book work. I don't know, but he did so for this segment. This is also, of course, directed by the special effects guru, actor, and director, Tom Savini. He sits in the director's seat this time for this segment, and man, I really wish he could have gotten a better one. I was not a fan of this one at all. It's essentially a retelling of the Loch Ness Monster story, only in Lake Champlain. It's about this girl who is with her mother and her brother who are living with this asshole of a fucking stepfather. And to be honest, like right off the bat, I didn't realize that this was actually taking place in 1984 until they carved it on the side of the creature that we saw. And I'll be honest, I was not very fond of that whole trope. And normally I can understand it, but I just wasn't aware that this was a 1980s throwback sort of thing. And man, I was just like, this is a very tired trope about the stephead, dickhead father who nobody should fucking put up with. I digress. It's part of the story. It's just worn out. Really, the only factors that we get that it's 1984 is a Polaroid camera. You could kind of debate some of the clothes they're wearing, but you know, styles always recycle. You find that the daughter's obsessed with finding Campy. She has this book that her father had, who had since passed, looking for fucking Champy, who died lost in the fog somehow. And then her stepfather steps in to collect all of Dad's insurance money, which is pretty much the only money they had because the father, who passed away, had run them dry trying to find Champy in Lake Champlain. The stepdad has like an altercation with one of her friends, who's obviously a kid who's very interested in dating this girl. He's wearing like some sort of Rambo getup. I don't know. There was a kind of a tense little scene there with the stepdad and him. I'll give it that. But she goes running out after an argument with the stepdad into the forest and towards the lake and finds, of course, Champy. Or so we thought. To be honest, I never really for a second thought that it was the Lake Champlain monster. I knew right away that it was the baby, and I was like, that's like a baby or something, right? The funny thing that cracked me up, oh my God. Oh, man. She tells this story about how she's going to let her dead father get all the credit because he spent his life trying to find Champy, and now that it's proven that it actually exists, and this dead baby Champy is like washed up on the shores of Lake Champlain, her friend decides not only take a picture with the monster, but carve her and her father's name and the date in the side of the creature. And this was probably one of the biggest eye roll moments of the entire segment. Not only was I like, okay, we've seen this, the deadbeat fucking stepdad piece of shit guy over and over again. You know that he's going to get his comeuppance for being such a dickhead. But he comes, interrupts them all, gets eaten by the real Champy, which was kind of fun blood, you know. But the story just, for me, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to pick on Joe Hill or anything. It is a short story. It just didn't feel right to me. Everything felt very generic, very boring, knew where it was headed. It just wasn't a good one for me at all. If I had to score this one, it'd be like a 4.5. To each their own. You may have loved the segment. That's no problem by me. For me personally, I liked the first segment because it was just, even if not original, it did all the things that I like to see in a segment. So let's talk about and wrap up this whole season. This season has had its ups. It's had its downs. It started out strong and kind of wavered in between, up and down for a lot of people. A lot of people had some very high expectations for this show, and I think some of them are warranted and some of them are not. I think a lot of what we're dealing with is specifically with the budget that they had to run with this. This is sort of like a test bed for them to be able to do a second season. A lot of times you do a pilot, you do bare minimum on it just to get the stories out, then hopefully get more money to be able to do more of what you want to do. I think some of the storytelling was a little too by the book. There were some really classic new ones in there that I really liked. They're short stories, so they're never going to be this long piece that you want. A lot of times, short stories and short films are done with the hope of making a feature film, but they don't have the budget to do it. And there's no doubt in my mind that if there was a short story that was good enough to be a feature film, somebody would grab that motherfather and shove it up a feature film's ass and put it out for the public to suck on. I'm sorry. I don't know where I was going with that. Basically, a lot of directors do short films because not only do they love their craft, but they want to help write it or get these stories and ideas, these little babies that they birth from their imagination, out on film and or video nowadays. But I think that this series as a whole had some pretty good storytelling in it. Was it a 10 out of 10? No. we're probably dealing a little bit more with like a 7.5 or an 8. But the base that we have here with season 1, I think, is a good base to jump off of and go further. Will second season be as good as the first or better? We hope. Something to keep in mind, like I've mentioned in probably one of the other reviews I've done with this season, is that I think that because it did so well, they're going to get more money to have a better season. It's up in the air whether they're going to handle that money well. You never know. There's so many hands in the pot making this thing happen. But I definitely am looking forward to more, and I hope you guys are too. I think we need to be a little more sympathetic with this series and not compare it to the $13 million that the first 2 movies had, because I don't think that this show had as much as that. But I think they had a good budget. I just don't know how much it was for all of these stories. I mean, if you figure each episode is 45 minutes long, we have 6 episodes. That's 3 hours worth of movies. 3 movies worth, basically, of storytelling. So spreading out a budget over that could be part of the reason why it didn't click with everybody. But I think it was still a good season. 7.5 or an 8, I think, is appropriate for this. It kept my attention. It didn't go way over the top to make me a fanatic, but it's still good, and it is something that I will continue to watch and obviously do reviews with you guys. Would you like me to continue to do reviews for season 2? Because I find it fascinating to find out who did these things and tell them and share them with you guys. So thank you guys so much for coming by. I would love to hear what you thought of these segments, the season, anything at all about Creepshow down in the comments section down below. If you've never followed us before, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you guys are a fan of these short stories, and not just Creepshow, but Tales from the Crypt or anything like that, we will be doing something very unique here on the channel where I'm going to be doing storytelling of stories that I came up with that I'm going to do in an audio drama sort of format done with horror. This is something I'm trying to tackle over my vacation here, which I'm still doing YouTube videos on vacation, by the way, guys. But this is something that we're going to be putting out either every week or every other week for about 6 of these stories. I hope you'll stick around to check these out. I've got 3 stories already that I've kind of fleshed out the concept for, and I think that you guys might like it. So I hope you'll come back, and as always, long live the void.